What is up, Bat Family? Welcome back to a brand new video on the Batman, and today is another installment in the discussion series. We've got a lot to go through, and yes, I would have got this video up Friday. However, I was at my brother's wedding, and I've kind of been recovering ever since. I'm sure you can understand, and here we are. So yes, a lot to get through today, a lot of really intriguing stuff. I do just want to disclaim, by the way, because I feel like I did this enough in my previous video, but a few of you were thinking I was being deadly serious with the Riddler slash brother connection with Bruce Wayne. I really wasn't. It was more just, oh, what if they did do this? I need to kind of mention it to you anyway. But like, honestly, I completely agree with the people saying that would be way too much of a cliche thing. Plus, you do have to take into account the very similar story in Joker, albeit that was a very ambiguous reference to, you know, the brother theory. That's why I named it the craziest theory yet. I was just like, you never know. You never know. But interestingly, a few of you have commented, kind of expanding on, kind of screw that idea, but there is something else of whom the Riddler could be related to, kind of going into what we are grasping on, which is fairly reliable in terms of theory crafting, I think, the whole sins of my father thing. Now, we're going to get into that in some of these questions and all of that good stuff. Yes, I trust that you've noticed the Batman Christmas jumper. Wish I could show you in the whole frame. I have no idea if I'm blurry right now because I can never seem to figure out this freaking camera. But anyway, guys, strap yourselves in for another good time talking about the Batman. And hey, by the way, if you are brand new here, I just figured I should mention this. Check if you're subscribed. Check the red button underneath the video, whether on your phone or on your laptop or on your PC, I don't know. But if you find yourself coming back here week to week, maybe today, out of all the videos I've done, is the day that you subscribe. I would really appreciate that. And hey, if you are, or even if you aren't, at the very least, maybe you could like the video. That would really help me out. I really do appreciate support. Appreciate the likes. Honestly, it really does help out. Thank you so much if you've taken the time to do that. But let's get into question numero 1. And this is from, okay, so this is what I was on about with a bit of expansion, kind of screw the Riddler-Bruce connection, but Lil Sweet Lynn here, who's been commenting quite a bit on the videos recently, so thank you very much for the support. I really like this idea. I really do. And even though I fully admit that was the most wacko theory I came up with, one that I didn't even think really would be true, but I just kind of wanted to have fun with it anyway in the previous video, I knew that, like, we were going along the right route of something kind of with the sins of my father. What does that mean with Edward Nashton? Granted, I can't know for sure that that's actually Ed saying that about his own father, or maybe he was referencing it to Bruce's sins of his own father, as in Thomas Wayne. But Little Sweet Lynn gets into this. So, okay, Boba, I don't know about this theory, neither do I, the previous one I mentioned. But not long after the trailer was released, I ended up reading the supposed inspirations for this film, including Year One, The Long Halloween, Dark Victory, and Ego, among others. Which, by the way, guys, definitely recommend checking those out if you haven't already, of course. And it'll just give you a lot of context for these videos and when we're discussing this stuff. When I looked at how Alberto Falcone was drawn, it immediately clicked in my head that Paul Dano actually looks reminiscent of Alberto Falcone in The Long Halloween. Now, given how Alberto was constantly trying to gain Carmine's approval and be accepted as a part of the family operation in that story, my theory was, and sort of still is, that the Riddler is Alberto Falcone, or Falcone, whatever freaking way you prefer it, who was adopted from Gotham's orphanage. The line, "You're a part of this too," to me, refers back to when Thomas Wayne saved a younger Carmine's life. So if Riddler is an adopted Alberto Falcone, he just might have ill will towards Bruce, because unlike Alberto, Bruce was the apple of Thomas's eye, while in Carmine's eyes, Alberto was a weak failure. Hence Bruce and Alberto's different ways of dealing with Gotham's criminals. So yeah, the reason I really like this idea is because of what I kind of prefaced before I read it out, and how I definitely think there is more to the Riddler. I mean, obviously there is. This is the freaking mystery as to what, other than his clear tackling Gotham's corruption through murders, there's something more to this. Now, yes, I do not think Like, I would lay money down that I don't think he's Bruce Wayne's brother, despite me mentioning that crazy theory. But there is something more substantial with what he's been saying. You're a part of this too. How am I a part of this? You'll see. his kind of fascination with the Batman could be a bunch of different things, like in how he just likes how he's deciding to tackle justice like he is, albeit not in a murderous way. It could be that, or it could be that, yes, that you are a part of this too in many ways I've been over in a billion different variations in the prior few seasons of these discussion series videos. And I'm not saying Little Sweet Lynn is 100% right here, because of course I do not know, but it is a very interesting one, because take away whatever I've said before, let's just concentrate on the sins of my father. Now, when Bruce is in that part of the trailer, obviously he is looking at all the evidence. He's kind of, you know, that's the interior of a part of the manor that he's living in, and obviously he's got all the evidence scattered out on the floor. He's a very visual thinker and learner, I'm guessing, Bruce. That's why he's kind of got a spray paint and just kind of put it out on the floor, the Riddler's symbol, or insignia, if you will. Each part pointing to, you know, the clues. There's lots of evidence photos on the floor. And the part of where it says the sins of my father, I am choosing to believe, for now, at least, this is my standpoint, until one of you maybe influences me even more with another idea, that is Riddler saying the sins of his own father. Now, when you take into account the sins of my father, what could they be? That could be anything, but it would be quite fitting with Little Sweet Lynn's idea here that the sins of my father, from Ed's point of view, after finding out his heritage is the Falcone name, well, that couldn't be more accurate. Like, Carmine Falcone, the sins of what he's done in Gotham are, the list would be as long as every child's in the world's Christmas list. So that is super, super interesting. And as for like similarities to the way he's drawn in that particular story, I mean, sure, I personally wouldn't read too much into that. Albeit it could still be relevant. I just think that's more circumstantially evidency. You know, I can't. That doesn't hook me so much onto this theory as just the general presentation as what you're saying here with this submission. But yeah, you know, I do really like that idea. You know, he grew up in Gotham's orphanage. He's technically a Falcone, but due to whatever way in this iteration, he got disregarded by Carmine. It could develop Ed Nashton into this character in a way that is an adaptation of Alberto Falcone in the comics, if you know what I mean. And not only that, with the way he's been disowned, yeah, he probably wants to screw up his own father's operations as much as he can. And obviously this pertains to a bit of murder, but maybe, you know, through being in that orphanage, growing up in the way he has, albeit he is a bit, you know, got a bit of a screw loose, good old Ed, he kind of maybe wants to go against the very family that he is technically blood tied to. And they are, well, Jesus, you know, the Falcones live and breathe and help curate the corruption in Gotham. So this is a really cool theory that I think could end up being true. If there's like a blood tie in this movie between Ed and anyone, the Falcones and the way that John Turturro's Carmine is involved in this movie could be quite a cool revelation. Maybe, and maybe this is a shocking one to the audience, considering I know we haven't seen too much of John Turturro's Carmine in the trailers at all even. We do know that he is quite involved in the movie, whether that's from test screenings or whatever. So, considering the general audience's reaction to that 3/4 part in the movie where everyone's like, oh, you know, there's some kind of revelation, and just to reiterate again, it's not the post-credit scene shock Joker with Barry's, you know, Stanley Merck or whatever. I'm talking specifically way before that, at around 3/4 in the movie. Apparently there's some big shocking thing. So you can kind of see where I'm going here. If we get to know Carmine Falcone's character enough, we see him at the cathedral with Penguin, Bruce, and I'm guessing at several other points in the movie, and then it's revealed that, oh, like, the serial killer in the movie is related to him, and this is how it all works and ties in together. That's super interesting to me. So I'd love to know your expanded thoughts on that with Little Sweet Lynn's theory here. And yeah, just with the latter of what she was saying there with you're a part of this too, could refer to how, you know, maybe a bit of envy there with how he looks at Bruce being the apple of Thomas's eye and how he never quite had that. I don't know if Riddler would get that kind of, because I view that almost a bit petty, whereas I feel like Ed Nashton, in his own mind, he kind of views himself as a decent enough guy. Maybe there's a bit of self-pity there in a sense, but he doesn't wallow in that. It's more about just trying to dedicate his life to beat the corruption of the family that he was disowned from. I don't know if that would then also transform into, like, also Batman, screw you. Like, you know, you're the apple. I think, if anything, he he finds Batman, I feel like he might admire him. You know, like in the trailer where he's like, I've been trying to reach you, and then there's the old to the Batman stuff. Even if he gets beat by Bruce/Batman, I don't think he will hold anything against him. I think he admires what Bruce does, and if anything, he views himself similar because they are both orphans. I don't think there's any kind of ill will there, personally. I think what I will agree with what you're sharing now at the end is that he sees the kind of similarities. That's why he's trying to reach out to Bruce. It's just that they went both down completely different paths, and granted that Bruce did not grow up in an orphanage. Joe Sola asks, and I think I'm going to ask this a few times, but just for the sake of people who may not have watched every discussion series video, I do want to briefly go over this one. So, hey Boba, my question is, how do you think Matt Reeves will tackle some of the other more fantastical villains in the universe? We know that the Riddler is heavily influenced by the real-life Zodiac, 110% true. So what do you think Reeves could do, or could use as an inspiration to translate the not-so-realistic villains into a more grounded approach? Mr. Freeze, Clayface, Man-Bat, thanks, love the videos, man. So, just to start with the latter, I feel like someone like Man-Bat, even though this is getting more fantastical, my instincts just tell me that even though we will tread into fantastical sides with things that aren't quite real for us in this world, and what I want to say there is what I think he could tackle with the things that aren't quite available to us yet is like Mr. Freeze with cryogenic stuff. Obviously, we are treading the ground of cryogenic this, that, and the other, but we can't walk around in Sub-Zero-esque, you know what I'm trying to say, but that is a lot more believable. So, I'll get onto Mr. Freeze in a second, but and I believe they could even do Clayface. However, Man-Bat, I just feel like that kind of villain, albeit people would love to see that, my instincts tell me that, out of the trilogy and who he could involve, they will leave maybe harder leaps for the audience and just the world that he's building, like villains like that, out of the picture. I could be wrong with that. I would love to be proven wrong if Matt Reeves finds a way of doing that. But yeah, Mr. Freeze, my vision for him is just, you know, since cryogenic freezing and stuff like that, people get their brains frozen today, or, you know, technically can still be in suspended stasis, if you know what I mean. The way I would tackle him is a very similar approach, or I feel like Reeves would tackle, just through understanding his vision here. In the similar way that he's done Riddler, like, all of these characters, as he said before, it's kind of like a Fox's Gotham TV show style or approach with how these villains will be what they look like 10 years down the line. Even Ed Nashton, after the events of the movie, God willing, not that I'm religious, but that he doesn't die. Please don't kill him. That he will have his suit and well, I don't think he will necessarily go as question marky, but like, you know, it will look more comic booky, right? But you know, for the time being, he looks like kind of the Zodiac killer, but you know, he's still very Riddlery. So following that early villain and early Batman, because this is at Gotham's inception of the stories that we love, with these characters, you know, like Selina's only got balaclava. She doesn't actually have a freaking Catwoman proper suit. So following that with Mr. Freeze, I truly envision this kind of design where it's very prototypey, just like Riddler's suit, except it will have to, with Mr. Freeze, obviously facilitate him needing to be alive in that temperature. So the design I think I would go for to kind of mimic this raw design that the Riddler has, yet not as theatrical or as akin to, like, you know, the comic book designs. It's like a Russian cosmonaut astronaut suit. So, you know, like the lunar landings and like the Russians and the Americans were trying to go there. I'm not even on about the American early astronaut suits. I'm sure I'm showing on the screen like a very Russian cosmonaut kind of thing. And the way I can view this is that where Mr. Freeze is working and how the whole origin story works there, they are required to wear those suits. And they are very kind of steampunky, dystopian looking Russian cosmonauty, if you know what I mean, to protect them from the temperatures or spills from the chemicals or whatever. And that's, as a result, what he needs, maybe through him modifying it as well, to stay alive, like, and constantly keep that at a certain temperature, which would fit in the Russian cosmonaut suit, because obviously they have oxygen tanks for going into space. So in place of that oxygen tank, he would fit it with what he needs to, you know, stay at that sub-zero temperature. And I really feel like he would do that. Like, obviously, it's what I just said, like the suits, cosmonaut looking, Russian cosmonauts, 60s, early 70s, and, you know, they wear that because it's Gotham, and, you know, you've got the old kind of animated vibes series, steampunky prototype stuff, so it's not like, even though we're set in present day, I don't think that means you have to have a modern astronaut-looking Mr. Freeze. I feel like, as I just said, without repeating myself too much more, what they'll issue Mr. Freeze and the other workers with are the early Russian cosmonaut-looking ones, and it will go from there. So that's the approach I have for him. Despite me, it's kind of contradicting what I said about Man-Bat, but I would like somehow, maybe in a similar way, where some weird chemically thing. At the end of the day, this is a comic book world. Despite it being grounded, we are bleeding onto the edge of fantastical. I don't think they can go as fantastical as a literal man flying bat over Gotham. But with Clayface, I do feel like, despite what I said about not necessarily doing Man-Bat, you can do Clayface. How? If you can't do Man-Bat, right? Now, Stephen King's Outsider, I've referred to this many times before in these videos, but if you haven't seen HBO Max's adaptation of Stephen King's Outsider, I was personally a really big fan of it. It does lean in supernatural. Long story short, if you don't know anything about the book, this won't really give spoilers away, but the creature, this supernatural entity, basically kills children. And as a result, though, it makes themselves look like a person from the area that did this to the child. Yet it's kind of impossible because that person, the actual person, so let's just say they made themselves look like me, I was here recording in this room. So I may have an alibi for that, but it's like, well, how am I in two places at once? But the way they kind of do that, if you watch the series, it's very kind of Clayfacey. And I love that vision. And it could also appeal to the kind of aesthetic tone and vision that Matt Reeves goes for with the detective and noir, yet kind of thrillery vibes. And I'm not saying they have to replicate that every single movie, but my God, if you've seen Stephen King's HBO Max The Outsider adaptation, translate that to your vision for Clayface in the Batman trilogy. I truly believe they can do that, and instead of obviously the supernatural element, it's some kind of similar Clayfacey origin, or just something that allows him to, you know, his cells to do something like this, and where he can truly, in a kind of, maybe if they make it look really as grounded and realistic as possible, it's actually kind of like radiation sickness, skin peeling looking, where it's horrible. If you've watched Chernobyl or something like that, yet he can somehow like have the ability to morph. That would be great. I feel like it wouldn't be so much of a stretch, what, you know, in terms of maintaining Matt Reeves' grounded yet fantastical one. Yet I do feel like some villains like Man-Bat are a bit too far-fetched, but yet again, you know, if I'm talking about chemical altering, you know, radiationally morphing Clayface in the way that is done with The Outsider on HBO Max from Stephen King, maybe they can do Man-Bat, but I don't know. I do feel like that would be pushing it a little bit, and Clayface would almost be pushing it a little bit too much. But hey, this is open to discussion, so maybe you can expand upon that. But trust me on this, check out even some YouTube clips of The Outsider and the creature or whatever it is, and you'll see what I mean by that. And I think it will really inspire your guys' vision for the character as well, and the possibility of Clayface coming into the show. And let me know what you think about the Russian cosmonaut, steampunky Victor Freeze work suit, yet he has to take it and modify it for his own survival. That would be great as well. This one I wanted to include, it's from Kim Ackerman. I absolutely love watching these Batman videos. Thank you so much, Kim. It'll be missed once the movie comes out, but maybe we'll have some more theories and about the TV show. Great videos, as always, Boba. Loving your Umbrella Academy share. Thank you. Just wanted to address this, that I don't ever want to milk these videos at all. I just love making them so much, and clearly you guys love it as well. But I don't think they will be gone as of the end of the movie. They may be fewer and far between, but I do feel like when the movie's gone, especially with a post-credit scene, what does that give us? More videos to speculate about the second movie in the trilogy. Plus, obviously, updates throughout the kind of couple years in between production and pre-production and everything like that. But yeah, don't worry. I still will be doing videos based on... God, can you imagine the information we're going to learn throughout the 2+ hour movie? And where things can just go from there, bleeding into that second movie. Even, look, screw the setup for the second movie in the post-credit scene. I could talk enough with where could this go with what happened to the Batcave, or did something happen to the Batcave, or that moment between Bruce and Alfred, what could that mean for the second? There's a lot of opportunity for that. It's just, as I said, they might be more bi-weekly instead of every week. But yeah, don't worry guys, these videos aren't going anywhere. I will be covering this trilogy until its very end point, and even then, as Kim Ackerman said here, we've got like the HBO Max stuff as well. So there will be Gotham PD discussion series videos as well, which I've already done actually a couple of if you haven't seen them before. But yeah, don't worry, these aren't going anywhere unless I get hit by a frickin' Batmobile tomorrow. You don't worry, don't worry. So Hunter Wakeland says, my question is, in the first trailer when Bruce asked Riddler how he's a part of the story, oh, how you're a part of this too, you're a part, and the scene in the new one where Bruce has all of the clues on the floor and spray painted sins of my father, there seems to be an underlying factor that Riddler knows Bruce Wayne is Batman. If this is the case, how do you think this affects the story, and how do you think Riddler deduced it before the GCPD did? So yeah, it's kind of retreading some of the stuff we spoke about, just with a bit of a different topic to go down. We've spoke about like how does Riddler know who Bruce is? If he does, why doesn't he reveal it? Now, this isn't the first time that would be done. Some villains do just love the dance, even if there's nothing personal between them and they don't want to give away Batman's identity. Some, if they do find out, love the idea of trying to expose Bruce Wayne and Batman and adding that pressure onto him. Now, obviously with this one, it's hard because we've gone through many theories, like, or the first one with Lynn saying how, you know, maybe he did deduce it because of whether it's down to Riddler's intelligence and just seeing similarities between his orphan days and, you know, being disowned maybe by the Falcones and that of Bruce Wayne being an orphan. It is such a hard one because I do want to stress, you know, you're a part of this too. Could just mean nothing more than like Batman, you're a part of this through helping stop the corruption or something. I admit that would be such a like, oh, is that what you meant by you're a part of this too? No, I think you're right in how it does kind of lean into him knowing his identity. Honestly, if we're just going to assume he has cracked the identity of the Batman, it's because of Ed Nashton or Ed Nigma. His intelligence is off the scale. It really is, you know, something to be rivaling Batman's world's greatest detective level. And given the involvement of Gotham Orphanage, this, that, and the other, kind of screw every theory we've got going, but let's just kind of blend them all into one. I do feel like at some point along the way, maybe Ed has always kept a close eye on Bruce Wayne, even before he knew he would become Batman, because maybe he was always fascinated that he shared something with that famous Wayne kid, the orphan, just like him, albeit each of them went down very different paths. One, you know, was kept into Gotham Orphanage. It seems that orphanage was abandoned, so God knows what happened to Ed Nashton after that. And one grew up in Wayne Manor with a bloody butler. And maybe he's kept a great eye on him ever since then. And, you know, as I always say, they kind of grew into very similar roads, albeit they went down a different road in that crossroads. But the thing is, the similarities being that they're both combating corruption. So I don't think of someone like Ed's intelligence would be... You know, I do want to kind of temper myself when saying this, because you could say that in any comic book. You know, someone with Ed's intellectual abilities could always crack who Batman is. But if that was the case, then it would always kind of be over, potentially, in every single issue. It's a hard one. It really is. You're pointing out the spray painting on the floor, sins of my father, that being an underlying factor as to Riddler knows who Batman is. As I mentioned earlier, that could equally 50% just as likely mean Ed referencing his own father, the sins of my father, and Bruce is just trying to figure out who is Ed's father and what are the sins of his father. What could they have done? Who could that mean? And then, as to Lynn's theory earlier, what if he deduces that as Carmine Falcone, and then he goes along that trail? We get the Gotham Orphanage files between what we've seen of Jim and Batman and some of the behind-the-scenes footage, I believe, for that Blu-ray. I can't remember if this is that. It's all blending into one in my head. But if they do get the file on Ed Nashton, and it says... abandoned, well, I don't know if it would say abandoned by Carmine Falcone. But do you see what I mean? That's how they'll kind of say, oh my god, he's the, you know, bastard of Carmine. Who knows there? But I do think we should not put all of our eggs in one basket when it comes to sins of my father being Thomas Wayne. It could be, but, you know, the more we talk about this, the more ideas come out of it. But yet again, I would love everyone's ideas on Hunter's question. Now, Anthony's, is Anthony or Anthony? I know some people pronounce it both different ways, even with that spelling. I don't know. By the way, you ask, and this is something I don't think we've ever as a community on this channel have discussed. And I really want everyone's responses with this one in particular. So I don't know if this has been brought up or not. I don't think it has. But I'm intrigued in finding out how Pattinson's version chooses to be Batman. Keaton, Bale, and Affleck's version has shown why he chose bats. But you don't really see Pattinson's version have any interactions with bats. So I'm wondering if they'll take us down that adventure. So yeah. How does he choose to be the Batman? I mean, it's always obviously referring to some kind of incident, if you will, with bats. And we know that this isn't an origin movie, but Matt Reeves has specifically said it refers to his origins, so I have no doubt that will involve the whole "You're a part of this too" thing, maybe "This is my father" thing, whether that's his father or Ed's father. Doesn't really matter. It'll refer to his journaling. And this is what I wanted to get down to when it comes to this question. I believe we won't necessarily see flashbacks, albeit I do think there will possibly be flashbacks in this movie, but don't worry, nothing like, oh, we're going to see them get shot, slowly hit the floor. We could just see a streak across the screen, sorry if that killed your ears, of a gunshot, and that's it, just with Bruce having a nightmare, similar to like Revenge of the Sith, Anakin having nightmares about Padme kind of thing. That's such a random comparison, but do you know what I mean? Something quick, nothing Uncle Benny, if you know what I mean, with Peter Parker, oh, do we really need to see Uncle Ben again, you know, kind of thing like that. But I do feel like we will get flashbacks, 100%. But with regards to the Bat incident, I don't know if we're going to have that, but what we do have the opportunity of when we see those journal pages is, I think with Bruce's monologue, for example, one of the first few pages of Batman Year One, you see him in his drifter persona going down the streets, talking about Gotham, what it's become. We know this movie is going to have Robert Pattinson's Bruce read out like his thoughts in that point of view driven character way, and that's one of my most anticipated things about one of Reeves's creative choices for this movie. As a result of that, I do feel like with the pages, maybe you're seeing it on screen right now, going over the designs of the Bat emblem, it would be really cool if we just get monologue from Bruce talking about it, like where, you know, terrible off the top of my head, just like, you know, the time when blah 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 blah, and that's how I don't know, just something referencing how it happened. I think that will be the way it's done, just through the monologues we're gonna get. I would be quite surprised if we get the bat through the window or something like that actually shown in the flashback. I think it will just be depicted through him talking in his monologues, which we're going to get a lot of throughout the movie because he literally writes in a journal, and that will be such a good way of getting into the character's head. As to why he particularly references his origin, it does come across kind of contrived of like, hey, let's put this in there because that's how they know. Like, it's just like, why would he be talking about it 2 years later? But I do feel like they would write a very careful way of how it refers to that origin, and for some reason where he's like, this reminded me of that day where, you know, when I was a kid, blah, 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 and this is the reason why I came up with this symbol. There's something like that fits in a sentence with the larger, whatever broader thing he's talking about. But yeah, ultimately I think it comes down to the textbook. But yeah, he will definitely have some interaction with bats in some way, because that's obviously the way he comes up with his symbol. So I'd love to know your ideas, guys, if you agree with the journal idea and how it will be explained through a monologue, of which we will be getting in this movie, but expand upon that for me. So next up from Carl Stanley, in the interrogation scene with Batman and Riddler, do you think Gordon allowed Batman to come and interrogate him because I'm sure the Riddler will be highly protected and won't let a masked vigilante go face to face with a serial killer, but maybe Batman sneaked in and got caught after that scene from the first trailer when Batman is in trouble with the GCPD officers and then escapes, and that's where we see the officers shoot him and Batman wingsuits out of there. Would love to hear your thoughts. So yeah, this one's a bit of a a bit of like a mixed bag, because those scenes are obviously related, where he's struggling to get past a whole room littered with officers. We see in the B-roll footage he's standing there when in that same room it's like the kind of rusty gates get lifted up, and I am willing to bet at the same time, I don't know if that looks like the precinct to me, you know, but when we see in the trailer that Batman's visiting Ed Nashton, he's wearing the Arkham State Hospital like jumpsuit. So why would he be wearing an Arkham State Hospital jumpsuit in a precinct? That just tells me Batman's gone to Arkham State Hospital, and that's where that location is. But that doesn't mean, though, before he gets to Arkham State Hospital, before he visits him again there, that he also spoke to him in the precinct. So, yeah, I do think that maybe the GCPD, including Jim, Lieutenant James Gordon, does let Batman talk to him. And it is possible that because Batman gets so angry, similar to the Arkham State Hospital scene, unless that is true in how they could have CGI'd Riddler's reflection onto the glass, and that Arkham State Hospital jumpsuit could be the Joker scene, because a lot of people are thinking that at the same time. Not saying that is the case, but with what I just mentioned, that is an interesting kind of theory. It is very easy to do that, because it is interesting how they never wanted to show his face even above the chin before that cuts off. But I'm going on a bit of a tangent now. I digress here. Getting back onto the point of where there's a struggle and everything like that, I do think Batman does basically break the kind of special permission he was given to even speak to Nashton in the first place. Similar to like how he's angry and smacks the screen screaming, "What have you done?" Maybe things just go a step further and they try and restrain him. But to then... This is what baffles me so much. Like, I know I keep repeating myself across all of the videos here, but to then open fire on the Batman. And you have to assume all of that happens after the events of when he's been invited onto the crime scene of the mayor's death, where like they're taking photos and it's like, does this mean anything to you? And he approaches and the Batman card is there. To then open fire on this man, like, does he break through like a glass screen and begin to choke Nashton? But even then, to open fire, maybe like Lieutenant James Gordon's like, don't hold fire, but the GCPD officers, being GCPD officers, break some of the chain of command and start open firing anyway. Bruce is kind of forced to start his escape, which just in of itself, I think, invites more pursuit and thus more kind of potential firing. It's really a hard one there. I'm so intrigued. I think, other than the obvious fascinating parts of the movie to me, this is one of the more fascinating things I'm, getting excited for, is what leads to that. The only thing that I can conclude that would make GCPD officers open fire on the Batman is that he disregards any kind of special consultation freaking badge that he has. And as we see in the trailer, he's trying to break through people. Like, that's, I know Bruce is Batman and Batman's Batman, but it's kind of disrespectful to all those officers in a sense. Like, if he's gets so angry, and as we know, Bruce has got tunnel vision angriness in this movie, to the point of where he could be potentially shooting himself up with adrenaline to keep going. Imagine how impaired he's going to be through lack of sleep. Just everything, put that all under this umbrella, Penguin's umbrella, if you will. He might get so tunnel vision with the Riddler being apprehended after he's arrested at the beginning part of the second trailer, where he's invited in, but like he gets so flared up that he starts maybe hurting officers. He might just be getting past them. They might try and close their gate. He like pulls it up. He goes through, and at the end of the day, maybe they're forced to just kind of open fire in a sense, and maybe Bruce is just, through the desperation of whatever the Riddler could have planned next, just gets to a point of not caring about what his actions could look like to the officers around him. And that's where, you see that part in the trailer where Jim just kind of like grabs him and like throws him up against the wall. And we know what Bruce feels like with Jim. He's not exactly got to disregard Gordon. I mean, if he did, that'd be pretty like, damn. But in that moment, it seems like he's beginning to listen to Gordon, because Gordon's screaming at him in that moment. He's like shouting at him. But again, is that before or after they open fire? I mean, it surely has to be before. But like, if that is the case, he's still gonna kind of be like, Jim, get out of my way. I'm going. Like this one is like, I need ideas. I really don't know. I don't think he would have sneaked in though. I do feel like Batman would get permission to talk to the Riddler, because Batman at this point, I think they would realize that the Riddler keeps addressing to the Batman at frickin' D.A. Gil Coulson's cathedral scene, the mayor's death scene as a card, and on top of probably how much he's helped in the case already, they're kind of like thinking, even outside James Gordon's command, yeah, we should probably let the Batman at least have a talk with him, but you have to think it's something that comes out of that. Alright, and the last one for today is from Connor Woog, and thank you for being a channel member, by the way, because you got a little Boba crest there. Hey Boba, thanks for the Bat videos. Thank you, dude. I'd like to hear your take on what the relationship will look like between Riddler and Batman in this movie. Do you think we'll have a scene where Riddler traps Batman in his base and makes him solve his way out like the Arkham games? Or will their relationship mainly take place in public with events of terror similar to The Dark Knight? Thanks. So I think it's a mixed bag there. I think it is super interesting to think, like, does Riddler have a proper HQ? I don't know if he will. I mean, I think there will be a place of where he resides, where he's got some stuff. And yeah, if Bruce goes there, it would be a great opportunity for a saw trap like maze where Bruce has to get out. Albeit that it's funny because I did say earlier, I don't think Riddler has any particular ill will on the Batman. I think he likes what the Batman is doing, but he may still want to kind of screw with him a little bit, so that is open to be seen, I suppose, there. But I do think the reason why I say mixed bag is because then there's the public stuff. Of course, like literally in the cathedral, you got the district attorney, Gil Colson there, and before he blows up, there's a letter to the Batman strapped to his chest. So that is going to be a public thing, albeit that all the citizens by that point would have already evacuated out the cathedral building. So yeah, I do think there will be some individual like scenes of where Batman is in a place where he has to save. He has to save someone or like get out. Because at the end of the day, I'm going a bit to and fro on the ill will thing. I think the Batman, Ed Nashton doesn't underestimate the Batman or doesn't think he will necessarily die in these things, but he's willing to kind of tread that line. So for example, Batman fails in saving Gil Colson. He gets blasted back by that explosion. It doesn't kill Bruce, as we know, but you could argue that the Riddler is kind of being a bit presumptuous in how, you know, how that explosion could kill him or not kill him. So yeah, mixed bag. I think he admires Batman in one way, but the Riddler's main priority is doing his thing, you know, no more lies, no more corruption, this, that, and the other, exposing it. Batman gets involved, you know, he obviously wants to apprehend him, so I think he does want to slow him down, but as Riddler does, and Riddler will do, he wants to have some fun with that, give him some clues along the way, plus slow him down a little bit, because I think he wants to still assert his own mission in stopping this corruption, stopping the no more lies-esque things, whilst also getting a bit of Brucey's help at the same time. As for like just the relationship in general, it's kind of, without repeating myself, what I've aforementioned in this video, in the sense of, you know, whether he does know his identity or not. Let's just say he doesn't. They're both two people going after corruption. I think that offers some kind of modicum of respect here in a really weird, bent way. If he does know who he is, they're both orphans. Do you know what I mean? So I think there's always going to be this level of fascination from the Riddler, and that's inherent. You know, I've been trying to reach you, and as he has, there's so many letters to the Batman. There's something there that, you know, I'm not saying Riddler has like a love heart journey trip for the Batman, but there's something there, and I can't wait to see how that's fleshed out. But regards to like your public stuff, or like, you know, traps him in the base kind of thing, I think that will be, both of those things will happen. I'm really confident about that. But anyway, guys, I will be doing another one of these soon. Honestly, like the next question I really want to answer because it's super interesting and it kind of ties into what we've already been saying, and then one after that, and one after that. We've got some great stuff to go on to in the next few videos. So everyone, if you want to keep seeing these, please leave a like on it. That's all I'm asking you to do, other than if you're not subscribed, just make sure you click subscribe. When you have the notification bell clicked, if you want to do that, make sure you have the videos set to all, rather than just some or personalized or whatever it is. Make sure you got them set to all. And if you just want to show your support even more, you can of course check out my links in the top pinned comment. Maybe go to my merch store for some Boba beanies, Boba hats. I have a Patreon, or maybe just do the join button on the channel. But other than that, everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, Bat family, in the next video. Goodbye.